I believe that, especially in our culture here, we are motivated by shame. You know, and I don't want to get on this soapbox of our culture, but I'm going to a little bit. Fear and shame are what get people to do what they do. It gets people to buy stuff. It gets people to move. It gets people to make decisions. It's a very good motivator for a while. You know, I like to use the analogy that gasoline is a very good combustible material that moves a car, but it's pretty carcinogenic. It's pretty deadly if you drink it, right? So shame and fear can motivate me to get out of bed and do something for a while, but eventually the shame and fear, that energy that the shame and fear create, kind of takes over and I become paralyzed. So negative self-talk is a way, one way that people motivate themselves. I'm so stupid. What's wrong with me? I need to do better next time. Okay, then hopefully if you can do that and do better next time, then the negative self-talk might have been a productive behavior. I tend to lean towards no, it's not a productive behavior. It's a very corrosive behavior. There's two things that are real in the world: love, and then the opposite of love is fear, right? So I'm either going to act in love towards myself or I'm going to act in fear towards myself. Now, people would say, no, the opposite of love is hate. That's not true, because hate is just a form of fear. So negative self-talk comes from that place of fear. It comes from a place of lack of self-love, right? And I want people to understand that loving oneself is not a bad thing. Now, I'm not saying pat yourself on the back so much that you're breaking your arm and you're looking egotistical or you're looking conceited or entitled. I'm saying, how do I want to be treated by other people, right? Well, most of us want to be heard. We want to be understood. We want to be validated. We want to be comforted. We want to be challenged, right? We want to be corrected as long as it's coming from a place of love. There's a lot of things that we want in relationships. Well, I have to be able to give that to myself first. And if I don't give that to myself first, then I'm going to project all that crap onto my other relationships in my life. So I promise you, if I'm talking negatively about myself, I'm talking negatively about you. And I can easily do that. Why? Because it was kind of ingrained in me. Why? How? All our culture ingrains us in that way. The way I was raised, ingrained that in me. My parents did fantastic work, but they're human, and they motivated by fear and shame. It's kind of how we parented for a long time in this country. So how do we get out of that cycle? Well, we got to first recognize that I'm doing it, right? Mindfulness, when I'm working with clients, like mindfulness is the key to healthier, better emotional health. And when I mean mindfulness, really paying attention to what's going on inside me and being able to articulate it in a way that I understand it. I look at our brain, the way it works is, I'm from the Midwest. In the Midwest, there's a lot of cornfields. And if you want to go play in the middle of a cornfield, the first time you got to go knock down a bunch of corn stalks. And it's really hard to knock down a bunch of corn stalks, but you got to really create the path that you can go back in the cornfield and play when you want to. The brain is very similar. When you first start a new behavior, it's really hard to ingrain that into your brain of this is the path I want to take from now on. And the brain is lazy, so it goes to the path of least resistance. So if you have spent a lot of time judging people, the brain's just going to go to that. That's just what that neural pathway does. And it doesn't want to have to do any more work than possible. So when we begin changing the way that we think and we feel and we behave, it's really hard. I was trained out at the Meadows under a brilliant woman by the name of Pia Melody, and she talks about this idea of the inner child. And you get there's a lot of inner child work out there. John Bradshaw, Claudia Black, Peter Levine, Bessel van der Kolk, a ton of people are talking about the inner child. And what does that mean? It means that there's an ego state in there that's really young. You're looking into the mirror and you're getting ready to go to the club and you don't like what you see. One thing you can remind yourself is if you're judging yourself and putting yourself down, you're talking to that little girl inside of you that probably needs love and acceptance and understanding. When I say that to people, they're like, oh shit, that really struck a chord. Yeah, and guys too. There's a little boy inside me. He's a little hippie boy. It's got long hair, running around with no clothes on in the middle of a field smelling flowers. That little boy just wanted to be loved and understood and heard and validated. And he didn't want to be judged. And so when I'm looking in the mirror and I look at myself and I'm overweight and I'm getting old and I'm getting gray, yeah, I can do that. But again, why? Am I trying to motivate myself to do better? Well, it probably isn't working, because I've done that long enough and I'm still overweight, I'm still gray, I'm still getting older. Or can I look in the mirror and say, wow, I see that little boy inside me that just wants to be understood and accepted and heard just for who he is. So that's the first thing I like to do, is just look at that younger version of yourself. Secondly, think about, why are you so worried about what you look like? I hate to tell you, but neither of us are that important. Nobody is that important. The people that run the world, they could leave today and the world would keep going. And I don't mean that to be an asshole. I'm not trying to say you're not an important person. You're a very important person to the people in your life. I'm always worried about what people are thinking of me. The interesting thing is they're worried about what people are thinking of them. We're all doing the same thing. I'm not worried about what you look like. I'm worried about what I look like. We can have a task that needs to be completed, and we can spend all of our time doing this rat race in our head and all the negative self-talk of, I'm not going to get this done, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, what's going to happen? And by the time we've gone through all of that, we probably could have been a little bit more creative and productive in the project that we needed to do. So recognizing that it's just a way to kill time. It's a way for us to not walk through our fear. So if there's a deadline on a project we have to do, recognizing what's going on here. Well, I'm afraid that I'm not going to get this done on time. I'm afraid that I'm not going to do it right. Okay, sit with that fear. Feel the fear, and then do the next thing that you need to do for that project, as opposed to, I call this suffering over here when we talk about the negative self-talk and the narrative that I'm giving to the current situation. I'm already in enough pain. Why am I going to create more suffering on top of that pain? Fear, analogous for pain, if that makes sense. It all goes back to mindfulness. And you have to be willing to be honest and vulnerable with yourself. You have to be willing to recognize, well, I really screwed that up, or I could do that better. I love the idea of, do I want people to talk to me the way I talk to me? And a lot of times the answer is no. And so how do I want to talk to me? Or how do I want you to talk to me? That's how I want to talk to myself. And then maybe I should do the same thing for you. We mirror each other. You realize that? Like, my energy and your energy will mirror one another. And if I have negative toxic energy, you're probably going to have negative toxic energy back, and we're going to bounce that toxic energy between us. So if I can find a way to mirror love and kindness and acceptance and understanding, I'm probably going to get that from you most of the time too.